In the combat doctrine of the former Soviet Union and the current Russian Army, the Su-34 is classified as a multi-purpose aircraft capable of attacking targets on land, at sea, and in the air at the front line. Therefore, this fighter aircraft line is also known as the frontline bomber. A product of the Sukhoi group, the Su-34 is actually a variant of the Su-27 fighter aircraft, developed on the T-10V technology prototype. This fighter-bomber line is classified by NATO as Fullback, Defender. With a rather special shape when the aircraft arranges two pilots sitting next to each other in the cockpit, as well as the arrangement of the front airfoil to increase the flexibility of the aircraft and the special design of the aircraft's nose. The Su-34 is nicknamed Platypus. The Su-34 was born from the need for a tactical bomber of the Soviet Air Force. The development of the Su-34 prototype based on the Su-27 line was carried out from 1977 with the aim of maximizing the airframe design of this fighter line, combined with specialized navigation and attack systems for frontline attack missions. At that time, the original design of the Su-34 was not considered important, when the Su-24 swing-wing fighter-bomber model had proven its effectiveness and was being focused on production. Everything changed in 1986, when the Su-27IB fighter-bomber variant was introduced with the -141 shillings passive phased array radar, the type equipped on the Sukhoi T-60S technology prototype. The fighter-bomber prototype had a design and size similar to the Tu-22M supersonic bomber. Right from its launch, the Su-27IB prototype was converted from the Su-27UB combat trainer with a rather special design, retaining most of the original fuselage and engine, but the front fuselage was armored and adjusted so that the pilot and weapons officer sat side by side. The tail of the aircraft was also increased in size to accommodate parachutes and backup generators. The Su-27IB model was expected to succeed the Su-24 fighter bomber with a rather limited range and a complex design for maintenance. The Su-24, when fully armed, has a combat radius of only nearly 600 kilometers with two auxiliary fuel tanks and a speed of 1,200 kilometers per hour when operating at low altitudes. Limited in range and maneuverability, the Su-24 can only attack targets 150 to 300 kilometers from the front line. This combat range is quite modest compared to the American attack aircraft of the same period, the F-111. The American version of the FB-111 has an operational radius of nearly 2,900 kilometers when carrying two AGM-69 guided missiles and four auxiliary fuel tanks. With the Su-34 line, the amount of fuel in the fuselage is increased to more than 12 tons, along with the ability to refuel in the air. To increase the flight range, the Su-34 can carry 3 PTB-3000 auxiliary fuel tanks. Each tank can hold 2.3 tons of fuel, more than the entire amount of fuel in the F-5E fighter and almost equal to the US F-16 fighter. The large takeoff weight allows a Su-34 fighter bomber to carry a total of more than 19.2 tons of fuel in the highest configuration, equivalent to the amount of fuel in the body of 6 US F-16 Fighting Falcon aircraft. The US F-15E Strike Eagle heavy fighter can also only carry a maximum of 16 tons of fuel with 3 auxiliary fuel tanks and an external fuel tank. The Su-34 has a maximum operating range of nearly 4,000 kilometers, nearly half the length of Russia, allowing them to carry out missions far from the base. When carrying 3 tons of bombs, for air-to-air missiles and an auxiliary fuel tank, the Su-34 still has a range of nearly 3,000 kilometers at high altitudes, or 1,700 kilometers when flying at low altitudes or close to the sea. The long range and large weapons load allow the Su-34 to carry out its main mission of attacking command, communications and logistics deep inside the enemy, as well as cutting off supply lines to the frontline forces. During the 2010 exercise, many Su-24M and Su-34 squadrons made a non-stop flight of 6,000 kilometers from western Russia to the Far East. The aircraft were all carrying maximum weapons loads and simulating enemy attacks. The exercise demonstrated the Su-34's range, with the aircraft only needing to refuel in the air twice, compared to 3 times for the Su-24M squadron. The Su-34 also saw combat for the first time in Georgia in 2008 and achieved its first victories. Su-34 units were later widely deployed in Russia's military campaign in Syria, dropping unguided or satellite-guided bombs on rebel positions. Classified as a 4th-generation fighter, the Su-34 is currently the mainstay of Russia's tactical strike force. It is considered by Western military experts to be an anomaly among currently produced fighter jets, with a unique mission and reflecting design thinking left over from the Cold War.